Parker Resources Mini Clinics. We've got a great one today. Coach Josh Herring, offensive coordinator at Jones County, is talking about practice organization. And that sounds like a generic topic, but I really want you to listen to this when he comes up with a list of things that they do at Jones County to make them unique in their offensive practice. And it is fantastic. Give it a listen. You're really going to get something out of this one today. Please be joined this time by the offensive coordinator at Jones County, Coach Josh Herring. Coach Herring's team. All right, I'm just going to tell you this, Coach. Now, because it's 2022, we got the internet. You know, you can get on there. You can look up people's records, points, all kind of stuff. I challenge anybody just questioning whether they should watch this to go look up how many points y'all been scoring the last few years, because I've been impressed with the point totals. I'm going to be honest with you. You guys do a good job. And looking forward to hearing what you got to say, Coach. So have at it.
Yeah, we appreciate that. And thank you for having us on and represent Jones County and for everything you're doing for high school coaches out there. We really appreciate it. I'm going to jump right in and talk a little bit about some practice organization and some things I think we do that are a little bit different, at least to a lot of people out there, and kind of show a bit of that and kind of go through our practice schedules and just some things we do. But to kind of the overview of this whole thing is just things that I think are different about what we do than most people, at least that I've seen. And the first thing, I probably am an evangelist for this as much as anybody I know, but we use headsets at practice. And everybody that comes to watch us practice always asks about that. I think that's something that's grown in the last few years that you've seen in football. I've seen some colleges do it, but that's a really big deal for us. I've got a quick slide right here I'll kind of go over. But if people, when they ask me about practice, I think the single biggest thing to our offensive practice being successful is us having the headsets.
Yep.
It can be a pain in the butt to get everything set up, and maybe you have some young guys that can do that on your staff, but it's been a total game changer for us as far as having practice be like games. And that's what we're always trying to do. And we're always, having practice for players, but I don't think most of the time, I don't think coaches ever think about you got to have practice too. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second with play calling, but this is practice for us every day, just like a game. And it allows us to get off the field, to handle substitutions just like a game. For me as the play caller, I'm in the box. And if I'm on the practice field in a team setting, and our head coach, Mike Chastain, who runs a phenomenal practice, most of this stuff is his stuff. But he'll say, hey, everybody off, and he wants it as game-like as possible. Well, it's hard for me if I'm standing there on the sideline not to constantly coach and do things that I couldn't necessarily do in a game. This allows me to stand back. Sometimes I've even gone up in the bleachers before, and it's just like in a game. And you're getting practice as a coordinator. You're getting practice with substitutions. We feel like our penalties have gone down since we've started doing this. And it becomes a lot of the nerves that you have of that first game of the season or that first scrimmage are gone, because every single day is just another day for the offensive staff, because you're used to communicating. And it enables you to fix stuff really fast at practice. I can say something I see on the headset. I don't have to scream or yell. I don't have to write it down and even talk about it after practice. There's immediate feedback that I can tell a coach, hey, you need to fix this, or, a player's doing this and we need to correct that. So it's been really, really good for us to be able to do that. And another reason kind of that we need the headsets is because we play really loud music at practice. I think that college teams have started to go to this a little bit more. I still haven't seen a ton of high school teams that do. I know it's growing a little bit. As a classroom teacher, one of the things we're all dealing with is that, kids can't even function without, AirPods and earbuds in and things like that. And so the number one reason we play music is just because that's what they like. It gives them some juice going into practice. If I can come out and I see they're already dancing about whatever music is on or whatever, usually it's going to be a pretty good practice. But so that kind of fools them into having a little bit of energy. But I think the thing that's beneficial to us is that once again, it simulates a game type atmosphere, and it can be a pain in the butt. Sometimes you may have to click and pause it. If you really have to go over something, if you're doing a heavy walkthrough period and you can't get as far away from it, but it makes us practice like it's in a game, and us having the headsets enable us to do the same type of problem solving and things that we would do in a game when it's loud. Our community loves football, and there are a lot of people at the games, and it's intense and loud. And so that helps us as a staff deal with the noise element every single day in practice.
Coach, this is really good. Really good. I hope people are hearing it for what it is. Now, I quit coaching 3 years ago, and I'm going to let you go in a second. I'm not going to take your time. But I want you to know this. When I quit coaching, it was 3 years ago. And if I had to do over, there's two things I would have done differently at practice. And one, and I would have said this before today, but I'm reinforcing your point. We would use headsets at practice, which we didn't. And we would have mixed in defense. We would have flipped defensive and offensive periods more during practice, meaning, defensive inside drill, offensive inside drill, back to defense, back to offense, back. The headsets at practice is a game changer, man. The people that do that, if you're not doing that, you need to. Let me ask you a question before you get away from that topic.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you practice, let's just say you've got an hour worth of offensive practice. Okay. Is the headset in play the entire hour? Is it in play half the time? Is it in play during the defense? Like, is it just something you do during team, or is it something you guys would carry on and it would help you outside of the team periods?
We use it in every period. And I think it's probably more beneficial in Indian group periods because you can coach, you can give immediate feedback. There's a lot of chaos in a team period. Like we all know, a lot of stuff going on. But if we're doing a drill with wide receivers and the quarterbacks are throwing, I coach quarterbacks, and we're all in kind of a group, I can see something, and the receiver coach may be 20, 30 yards down the field coaching, but I can see stuff behind him, maybe something he didn't see, and we can constantly communicate. So the other thing we do is in a lot of our routes on air periods, we're the defenders. So now I don't have to script it or anything. We can, in real time, I can say, all right, well, let's give a 2-shell look. All right, let's cloud this, or let's play cover 4. And so we can constantly manipulate whatever looks that they're seeing. So like from a scout coaching perspective, it's really, really good for you to be able to say, hey, bring pressure here. Let's see if we pick this up. That's one of the most beneficial things I think about it.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make that was clear for anybody that's, because, I've got a little bit of familiarity with this, but I do think there's some people listening that don't, and they probably love the idea. So that's there. All right. So proceed, Coach. I'll quit taking your time. Go ahead.
No, interrupt anytime. That's really good. One of the things I see people do this. I don't know why it's so funny to coaches that come out there. It just makes sense to me. But we have 2 rolling trash cans that go with the offense at all times, and they carry footballs. That's all they do. But we practice. We've had new assistants come in, and the first thing that they say is, "Man, y'all use a lot of footballs." And we do, and footballs cost money, and you have to take care of them. And that's kind of Coach Chastain makes that my responsibility. And it's a big deal that we know where all the footballs are. But we use a ton of footballs because we get a ton of reps in our receiver and running back type group drills. And one of the things that I've watched over and over and over in even college practices is, and one thing I hate is you throw a route 20, 30 yards downfield, and then the guy catches the ball and he scores because you want to emphasize scoring and everything else. And then he jogs 30, 40 yards back. Well, we're trying to save guys' legs. So I'm going to show you a really quick film example of this right here. It's stupid simple, but I see constantly people not do this. So this is just an early drill in practice where we're installing in spring training a 2-man combination. It's a snag combination everybody in America runs. But you can see we've got a can here. It's full of footballs. And we've got a can here. After our guys go, they stay down on the opposite end. And so they're not having this whole run back, thing that happens. And so when the quarterbacks are done and we're to the end of the line, then we're going to take off down there. They've already ran. We can do that pretty quickly. If we have 4, 5, 6 quarterbacks, we can even send a couple down early, and then we will come right back the other way, working the opposite hash. And that enables us to get is really the amount of reps that we get in RPO periods and passing game periods we can get as many as we want. It's really just, we don't want to exhaust the kids. That's how many reps we're getting. So it's never a situation of, okay, let's, make sure that we're getting more of this player. We can get as much as we want because we're going so fast and we can throw so many balls, but you've got to have a lot of footballs to do that. So we'll typically come out to practice, and this shocks people, but we'll have about 25 footballs offensively that we'll have in the cans. And that's what we'll use. And that the way we can just go, we're never waiting on a ball to get thrown back to us. And it just enables us to go faster in practice, which we're really, really passionate about, getting the kids out of there as quickly as possible. That's been something. So 2 trash cans and a lot of footballs seems simple. All right, this is probably the wildest thing. And this was something that Coach Chastain was doing at Warner Robins before he came to Jones County. And I was very, very skeptical. Sometimes as a coordinator, it still drives me crazy. If he watches this, I'm sorry, Coach, but we don't have running backs that are full-time. every running back we have, we steal from the defense. And kind of the thought process behind that is running backs are among your best athletes. We do play guys both ways. We don't play everybody both ways, but everybody has a primary position. And every one of the running backs in our program has a primary defensive position. And it helps with depth. All right, that's big. But it also helps them with their future, because running backs, especially if you're a major Division I Power 5 running back, those are very rare, and those are real dudes. Most football teams in America, among the best players on their team are running backs, but they may not be a running back who can play for Alabama or, who can play for Oklahoma, USC, whatever big program you throw out there, Clemson, doesn't matter. So we're giving them an opportunity to learn to become an athlete and learn a secondary position. Everybody in America needs DBs. So if he can learn a position defensively, even if he's our primary running back and plays running back for us most of the time in the game, he gets plenty of practice at defense, and he can go in and help them. And we create depth, not only defensively, but we create depth offensively. Now, the wild thing about that is for actual running back Indy, generally we will get the running backs for 1 5-minute period of individual. Now, we're going to get them in inside, and we've got a rotation that we work through and how this whole thing works. But that's been a big thing for us. Now, instead of having 2 or 3 running backs, and if one gets hurt, you're in trouble. Now we've built up depth to where all the way down to our JV and freshman level, we've got 6, 7 running backs that we can at least feel comfortable having them go in. And there are adjustments you have to make scheme-wise. We're pretty simple as far as the run game goes. A quarterback helps them out a lot, but that's been something that's big for us. So practice-wise, we also now, since we don't have the running backs most of the time in our group type periods, we use tweeners. And that's something I talk about a lot in clinics, but I think there's a lot of football players that are not true wide receivers. They're maybe not a true I type tailback that, you traditionally think about, but they're really good with the ball in their hand. And you've got to figure out ways to get those guys the ball. That it was, something that wing T teams always did a really good job of, because they had multiple backs. But sometimes people that are in a more spread environment in today's football, they're just like, well, he's either a receiver or he's a running back. Well, we get those guys touches at running back too. And so they get practice, and we can throw them the ball out of the backfield. We can do simplified run game stuff with them. And so it just helps us not really have to worry about depth at running back anymore. And I think that's been big for us.
I love it, Coach. Running backs where people can play too. Everybody wants football, so they'll learn what to do to get the football. They don't have to have as much time as the other guys.
That's exactly right.
That's just common sense.
The next thing, and again, this is something I was skeptical about, and this is Coach Chastain brought this again with him from Warner Robinson. It's been great for us. We don't have a 9th grade staff. Now, we're a school that hovers around 1,600 kids, and we're 5A, kind of middle to the lower end of 5A, most reclassifications. And generally a school that big, especially if it's mid to South Georgia, is going to have a full freshman staff, and that's going to be part of the deal. We don't have a 9th grade staff. Our freshmen practice with the varsity coaches. And that there's a bunch of, from a head coach's perspective, there's a bunch of positives about that. There's probably some negatives too. But for us, like I've been, and our defensive coordinator have been the play callers for our freshman team. And it's enabled us to develop relationships and be around them in ways that we wouldn't. And I've coached several programs that had a full different freshman staff. And if the freshmen, you really, once the season gets going with the intensity of the season and the time, you don't see those guys. So now that we're coaching them, they're in every drill. There are sacrifices you have to make as far as it goes with them. But we feel like the benefits of them being in meetings with older guys, them learning the culture of your program, and then being able to participate in drills and get coached by the varsity coaches who see them every day, we think it helps us as far as building not just depth, but building relationships as they go through the program. And that's been really big for us. So we have to figure things out practice-wise to allow them to still get reps. And that's part of the reason that we're so obsessed with going fast in drills and getting a lot of reps that are quality reps, not just reps to get reps, but to get quality reps in drills that they're also getting to participate in too. And it also gives you extra bodies for scout teams. You've got to be sure not to beat them up. We're trying as hard as we can, just like everybody else, to keep kids playing football in 2022. But it gives you a lot of extra bodies for scout team, and you can really evaluate and develop those kids off film. So,
Coach, I think you've been watching the podcast. Everything I normally complain and say about y'all are already doing. So maybe you guys are way ahead. Need my help.
Well, you're the guy. You're ahead. So if everybody's still.
You know what's easier to be ahead when you don't have to lose any games, Coach. It's easy. It's easy to be ahead when you just tell people what they ought to be doing. You do see it differently though, and you take a lot of practical knowledge when you're not invested like you are coaching your team. And what I'm impressed with, I've been impressed with Jones County before you started talking, but I'm even more impressed now, is how practical y'all are able to do when you're in the middle of it. Because it really is harder than people think when you're in the middle of it to not panic and do something totally different or just conventional or what we've always done and not be able to do these kind of out of the box practical things. So I commend y'all for that. Keep going, Coach.
Yeah. People talk about this a lot. We really do. We meet more, okay, than your average high school program. Now, we have huge advantages as far as our administration. And you know, for sure now you're in HR and the admin, and you understand how important a good administration is to a football program. And I think that's one of the most misunderstood things in coaching. But we get our kids, we get a weightlifting period. We get them 6th and 7th period. Our freshmen, we don't get 7th period, but they lift in, or we get them 7th period, but they lift in 1st period. So there's some separation. But we get them for 2 periods a day. So meetings are very important to us. Part of our thing is we want to get out off the practice field as quickly as possible so they can get home, they can do work, handle all their schoolwork, see their family. But in order to do that and run the program the way we feel like we need to run it, we do have to meet. And so we understand. I've been at programs that did not have that advantage. It's a massive advantage to be able to have that meeting time. So that does help us probably practice less than some people, and I get that. But we are not on the field for a long time. You hear people talk about coaching off film. We are big on that. I think you can go to an extreme with it, where there are things where we've got to get this fixed right now, but we're going to be able to do it within how we schedule practice to do that. And that'll be the last thing I kind of talk about. But we're not on the field ever, even in spring, more than 2 hours. As the season goes on and we kind of get where we need to be, our periods, which are 5-minute periods, will typically get cut down even to 4-minute periods. And there's an expectation that we're, for the most part, going to get the same amount of reps, because by that point in the season, if we're getting into mid to late October, early November, we should be sort of, we're trying to practice to a peak and get to that point where it takes us less time to do stuff and we can move faster, not only in drills, but in team periods as well. So the last thing I'll talk about is, and just kind of go over really quickly, you can talk about practice for days, but kind of just the flow of how we do things, I think, a little bit differently. And this actually kind of piggybacks off what you were talking about earlier. We try and have a little bit more of a game-like flow to practice. And we do change practice from time to time and try different things. And this has been something that's evolved over the course of the past 3 years that our staff's been there. But we want to have a little bit more of a game-like flow. So, like, just as a quick sort of example before I show you the practice schedule, like, we're not going to have like a 30-minute block of special teams at the beginning and then be like, all right, we're done with special teams, and now let's move on to the next thing. Yep. Like, even our offensive team periods, we'll have like one offensive team period. We'll have a set number of reps that we want to get in that 5-minute period, and then we're going to something else. And we're trying to kind of mimic the flow of a game where you have a drive and then there's corrections from the drive and you've got other things you need to work on, and then you go back to it. And part of that, we feel like, keeps our kids from just sort of being like, all right, here's the offensive portion of practice. We're going to go 30 straight minutes of this. And so we want to go in bursts of speed and make it game-like, just like it's in a game. And we feel like if a kid knows, all right, we're going to Indy, and I know I'm going to get worked in Indy, but Indy is not going to be quite as intense or quite as fast as team. So if I can push through and give everything in this 5-minute team period, okay, then I'll have at least a chance to catch my breath. And so kind of the way that it works, I'll show this. So I've got it kind of blocked off and kind of show you how there's almost a halftime portion. So this is just your basic everyday practice schedule, and I'll go over it really quickly. But so we have our meetings, we're going to go through that. And when we transition to the field, there's our time up period where we've got our quarterbacks and running backs. That's when we get the defensive players so we can handle handoffs and run our zone tracks and things like that. Notice here on the schedule, it says focus on the 9th grade O-line pass set. So there's going to be things that we feel like the 9th graders really need work, and we're going to get the older guys to help coach them up. If it's something that our O-line coach feels like, okay, I can still 5 minutes and really work with the freshmen and still get some work for the varsity guys, but you have to put focus on those things. So the RPO and combo period would be what I showed with the cans. We're getting a ton of reps doing that. And then, so we've started Indy like your normal practice, and then boom, we have a good versus good play it period. And our play it periods are practice for the coaches and the players. So those are our only unscripted periods. When we go ones versus ones, O against D, and it doesn't matter who we're playing, they're going to run their stuff. We're going to run our stuff. We don't script it. So I'm having to practice making calls, and our defense coordinator's having to practice making calls based on the situation. So like on Monday, we do 2nd and 10. So it's 2nd and 10. Whatever happens on that play, whether we're 3rd and 10, whether it's 2nd and 5, 2nd and 1, whatever, we're going to play it off of that. So you're getting 3rd down work too, but it's not just scripted 3rd down. It's me having to react to what defensive look are they showing, and call off that. And so we're going to have that kind of throughout
after
practice.
The 3rd down, would you come back to 2nd and 10 again?
We go right back to 2nd and 10.
Okay,
and
so you're going to play 2 downs and go back. Yeah.
As long as the period plays out. Okay. And if he may feel good that we've got 3 or 4 reps, and then the 2s may come in. Gotcha. But it's for that 5-minute period, it's ones versus ones. And we also feel like that's not a ton of time. It's not too taxing on the ones versus ones, but it gets practice started off at a pretty intense level. So, we don't have a dynamic warm up. We go straight into it, and we use our drills to do that. And then that kind of signals, all right, let's get after it now in practice. And it kind of gets the thing started. And then while we're doing inside, they're doing defensive skelly. And this is how most programs that 2 platoon kind of work through stuff. Then we'll go back to routes on air, and we'll work through. I've just got here. This was a Monday. I think this was the end of September or early October. And so we'll work 2-point plays. Your normal stuff, you're going to work with groups, but we're working it on air. And then we'll go man coverage against them. And that's our routes versus their man techniques. We're not doing any scout. We're just going best against best. And then we flip inside and skelly. So what you're seeing is there's sort of these team and group periods, and then we'll go back to Indy, and that's when you can make corrections, not just off film the next day, but you can make corrections during practice based off how that works. And then there's a special teams period where we do specialty and punt and kickoff. So there is a block, but that's kind of in the middle. And it's almost like a halftime of practice for the kids, where some of those kids are involved in the special teams, but if they're not, we're doing something else with them that's going to save their legs. Like if they're a wide receiver, they're going to do ball drills if they're not involved in the special team. And we can also really coach our freshman guys who are not typically going to be on those varsity special teams during that period. And then just kind of the end you see here, I mean, we started at 340, we're only going to 536, and that's in the middle of the season. So when we do our team O scout, we immediately go from that to there's a defensive scout, and we don't have enough coaches to just have, everything completely separated. But me and the O-line coach will then take the quarterback, maybe a running back who's going to get reps with us in that period, and the O-line, and do blitz pickup. So that's a walkthrough type period where while scout's going on, we don't just ever have guys standing around ever. There's always somebody's involved in scout or they're getting coached in a walkthrough. And that's kind of the way the whole thing is set up. And then we have 9th and JV periods built in there for them to go against each other so that they're getting reps too. So there's a lot more we could go over. I know I'm out of time. The play it period at the end, you can see that's another way we do 3rd downs, where we go 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. And then we go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So those are scripted 3rd down periods typically, because we know exactly what we're going to get. And that's some stuff that we can work with each other. But that's a practice philosophy is like a huge, I mean, we could write books on it and talk about it forever. That's my quick spiel and kind of how I think we're different or some of the things we're doing. But go ahead.
That was fantastic. And I started this idea of these, 15, 20-minute things with the intent as an educator that we're not holding people's attention. You either need to do 5 hours worth of talk, or you need to do 15 minutes, 20 minutes. That's about what you're going to get out of people. And I didn't want to do a lot of fluff, and I wanted somebody to be able to watch 15 minutes and get something they could take with their team.
Right.
And at the risk of throwing shade on my other guest, who I do not intend to do, by the way, this is what I would if somebody asked me what I need them to do on this moving forward, I'm probably going to show them this clip, because that was awesome. There was plenty of real talk in there. Everybody didn't have to do everything, but you can pick one thing that can help you. We didn't talk about the history of football. We talked about this one thing, and
right.
It's not surprising to me, and it won't be surprising to anybody who's watched this whole thing, why you guys scored so many points and why you've been so successful. So I really genuinely appreciate you taking the time to share, because football is such a weird game. We have to share with the people that are trying to beat us up and get us fired, I mean, but we do that because folks share with us, and I appreciate you sharing, Coach. Coach Chastain does a great job. You do a great job. They're lucky to have y'all.
We appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you for everything you're doing. And I think this is a great idea. I know I'm going to watch everyone you post and get some ideas. And so, especially as pressed for time as we are, these days, that's why I think this idea of these kind of mini clinics is really, really good.
Yeah, I hope it'll take off, Coach. But I appreciate you taking time. And if I can ever help you guys, let me know. I need to get down there and check you out sometime. All
right. Hey, and I've seen and follow you on Twitter. You're an Alabama guy. Roll Tide, man. That's where I'm from, born and raised. So.
Listen, I'm from Alabama, Foley, and lived there for 22 years, I guess. But I've lived over here now about as long. But I went to the University of Alabama, so I used to not be that many of us, but ever since Alabama's been really good at football, been a lot more folks claiming them.
Yeah, I always ask them. I start asking them to name coaches.
Yeah,
that's what I start doing. That's when all right, give me 4 coaches behind Saban.
yeah. Some of them forget. But I was there when Coach Saban and Coach Bryant, neither one were there. I was there in the middle of those, so it wasn't quite as successful as it was then. Yep. But yeah, it's good, man. Well, hey, let's if I get down your way, I'm gonna stop in and see you sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it.
Take care, Coach.
Yep, you too. Thanks.
See you.